If you want to heal, you have to be willing to go deep. What up, what up, what up, what up? Happy May. Happy May. Happy Wednesday. Hi guys. How's it going? Welcome to the podcast. So this week I wanted to go through a couple of things actually in line with just exactly how messy healing can be, because everyone has this expectation that healing is this kind of upward trajectory, linear line that doesn't have any humps or bumps in it. And if there is any humps or bumps, then we overanalyze, we get caught up in our own thought spirals and thought patterns. And this can essentially consciously and subconsciously start to drag us back down, right? And this week really showed me just how messy healing can really be. Flipping that round onto the other side of the coin, one of my clients just sent me through actually some blood results which show a huge shift. He has had chronic liver issues for a very, very long time, and his liver biomarkers have dropped down from 800 to 200, and his CRP is the lowest it's been in years, which is real measurable progress. And then also in the same week, you know, I've been dealing with something completely different on my end as well. There's a few things that have happened, and that has caused my emotional stress to be completely knocked out of regulation. Symptoms come creeping back in a little bit. My training essentially did not feel how it should. And I think this is the part that no one really talks about, because from the outside, it looks like things should be working, right? You're doing the right things, you're eating well, you're training, you're looking after yourself, but internally, something still feels a little bit off. And what really happened these past few weeks anyway, is I noticed pretty quickly that I wasn't as regulated as I normally am. You know, like I said, emotionally, I felt a bit more reactive. Physically, my body felt tighter, more inflamed. I felt a little bit more fatigued. I didn't have that fire in my belly like I usually do, and it started to really show up in my training. And this is where people essentially go really, really wrong. They assume that it's the food 9 times out of 10. They assume they've done something wrong big time, which then kind of gets them into their own head. They try to fix it by adding more things in, more supplements, more restriction, big one, more restriction, more control. And a lot of us have a bit of an issue with control, actually. When it comes to having a chronic condition like IBD, we begin to control our food, control what we eat, control and get really over-analytical of what we're consuming, control our social life, control. There's just a number of different things that start to happen, when actually what was really driving this for me was the emotional load. It wasn't anything else. It was the emotional load. And I know deep in my heart that emotion and emotional stress is one of my main triggers. It always has been. It took me a while to figure it out, but for me personally, that's what sets my Crohn's off. And with that being my weak point, if I'm being honest, it's still something that I'm working on. You know, I can handle structure well, I can handle discipline, I can handle nutrition, training, routine, but emotional stress, that still has the ability to essentially override everything. And this is what I mean when I talk about the nervous system. You know, you can't out supplement a dysregulated body. You can't out train it. You can't out diet it. Your body doesn't feel, if your body doesn't feel safe, then it will respond and react accordingly. And how that shows up in my body, for me, and you might be able to resonate with this to some extent, isn't one huge symptom. It was really subtle shifts. Things like my energy dipping, training feels a lot harder, a lot harder. I felt completely burnt out. And I text Steph and I said, I feel horrendous. I don't want to go to the gym. When I'm in the gym, I am stacking the weights on the bar and I'm just thinking in my head, I don't want to do this. And that's really unlike me. My digestion wasn't quite right, and that underlying feeling of it just being off, and then having those thoughts creep in, thinking, yeah, you're gonna flare. That's when you need to cut the thought pattern and understand how to do that and learn how to do that, because our thoughts are really, really, really powerful. And because I've done this for so many years, I notice it a lot earlier than someone that's either just been diagnosed or that's only a few years into their journey. And that's the real big difference. Not that I don't experience it, but I catch it way faster. And I've learned how to catch it faster. And that is really the crux of whether you nip these things in the bud or not. And what I actually did about it, and this is where I think a lot of people expect something super complicated, really complicated, and I know Amanda and I go on about this quite a bit in previous episodes when we talk about different sections of healing when it comes to different dietary protocols, training protocols, sleep, all of this kind of stuff. And this all comes into play again because it wasn't an overcomplicated protocol that I needed to put into play. I didn't have to overhaul everything. I didn't panic. I didn't start adding loads of stuff in. I literally simplified everything. I focused on regulating my body first. I always feel like I've got a fly on my body, and it's not, it's my hair tickling me. I really focused on regulating my body first. So that involves slowing things down, creating space, bringing myself back to baseline. Because essentially, when your nervous system settles, then everything else will follow. And a lot of people, their anxiety kicks up when these things start to happen. They start to spiral. They start to think, I need to know what's wrong. I need to see inside my body. I need to do X, Y, and Z. What do I need to do? Etc. When really this is the real moment where downshifting is very, very important. So rewinding back and going back to my client, because this is where things get a little bit interesting. At the same time I'm navigating this, he sends through these results on my app where all my clients are, and he was messaging me, his markers have dropped massively, CRP is lowest it's ever been in years. And this didn't happen overnight, right? It comes down to consistency, from understanding his body, learning what makes it tick, not from him reacting emotionally every time something felt off, from sticking to the process, trusting the process, even when it wasn't perfect, and understanding why these things aren't perfect, because there's always a reason why things are happening. And it's just about understanding and becoming aware. Remember, the first step to any behavior change is awareness of these things that either might need changing a little bit, removing, maybe establishing what new habits we can start to build in that become habitual, that are going to serve. And that's really the big difference. And the lesson that most people miss here is that healing, it's not about getting it perfect. It's about learning how to respond when things aren't perfect, and going back to that flare cycle and that loop of anxiety, because you will have weeks like this, like I was experiencing, where things do feel off, where your body doesn't respond how you want it to, where emotions really start to creep in. And that's not failure. It's part of the process. It's part of being a human being, We're always going to have different challenges thrown at us in life, different stressors, but it's how we perceive that stress and how we regulate that stress that keeps symptoms and inflammation low, and we're not having these chronic stress cycles. Instead, for example, I can use training. Training causes a very acute stress response, which is really positive for the body. Chronic stress, where we're stressed for a long period of time, is where we don't want to be. And what I want you to take from this episode is that if you feel like you're doing everything right, but something still isn't clicking, then zoom out. zoom out and take a different lens on this. Look at your emotional load, look at your nervous system, look at how you're responding, not just with what you're doing, but most of the time the answer isn't more. The answer is awareness. And this is actually what I want this space to be. I want this space to be real-time reflections. What's working, what isn't, and what actually makes the difference over time. And if you've got questions, if you want me to answer them on here, then you can submit them anonymously. I'll put the link in the show notes below, and I'll speak to you in the next one about that. And I'll start to incorporate them into each episode, depending on what I'm talking about. But this time, I always find actually in life, stressors come in cycles. Stress always hits me in chunks, and I'll get moments of smoothness when life feels pretty smooth going and everything is working out okay, and there are a lot of wins, a lot of success, a lot of positive things that are going on. And then all of a sudden, it's a bit like that saying, bad luck comes in three. But it honestly does feel like that sometimes, and you think, oh gosh, what else is going to hit me? And then something else ends up happening. And there was 4 really big pivotal things that were happening in my life that I was perceiving as negative stress. And the amount of cognitive energy that takes out of you is a lot. And so something else had to give in my life just for this really acute chapter. And this is where I see a lot of people go wrong as well, is that they keep doing the same thing day in, day out and expecting change, when really something has to give, something has to be let go of for this short period of time. And for me, I completely drew back on my training. I was going into the gym and I actually completely reprogrammed my block. So my training had to take a bit of a step back. So I put in a deload week. And when I spoke to Steph, and Steph's my best mate, and I speak to her more than I speak to anyone in my life. And she's my partner when we compete. And I just said, babe, I don't feel like I even want to step into the gym, you know. I'm absolutely exhausted. My training block before that was super full on. And I felt like I just run myself into the ground. So I put in a strategic deload week, not only for my physical well-being, but also for my mental well-being, to compensate for the additional stress that I was dealing with on the side. And one of those things was actually my mum's best friend fell down the stairs and had a bleed on the brain, and she was in intensive care in a coma, in an induced coma. And it not only, that kind of incident not only makes you appreciate life, but also seeing your mother go through a traumatic experience and being the one who is almost like being that person who she's offloading to is beautiful in many, many ways. But it's also a lot for someone to take on. And I know quite a few of my clients are in these positions when their parents become elderly and they're having to take quite a bit of the slack when it comes to looking after their parents. And it's really, really, really important that you start to tune into your body and giving it what it needs during different chapters of your life, and knowing when to pull back and how to pull back, and also knowing when to push forward and when to really lean into chapters of your life where you feel great, you don't have much going on, you want to accelerate in your performance, you want to accelerate in your career, or you want to accelerate in your training, whatever that looks like for you. But it's very, very important to just keep front of mind that it's also imperative that you keep checking in with yourself and giving yourself time, whether that be every day or every other day or once a week. You're giving time and energy back to yourself. And we see huge improvements in symptoms when patients start to do this. So I hope this episode has helped some of you out there, and I'll see you guys in the next one.